The metal chains cut into Jake Morrison's wrists as two alien guards dragged him across the black stone floor. His uniform was torn and bloody from the crash that killed his crew 3 days ago. Beside him, Amy Carter stumbled, but kept her head high. Her blonde hair was matted with dried blood, but her green eyes still burned with defiance. The throne room stretched out before them like a nightmare made real. Black walls rose up into darkness above their heads. Strange blue lights flickered along the ceiling, casting eerie shadows that danced and moved. The air smelled of metal and something else Jake could not name. Something that made his skin crawl. At the far end of the massive room sat Queen Valara, on her throne of crystal and bone. She was not human. Her body looked like it was made of living glass that changed colors as Jake watched. 6 arms extended from her torso, each one ending in hands with too many fingers. Her face was beautiful in a cold way that reminded Jake of winter ice. When she spoke, her voice echoed from hidden chambers in her throat. "Bring them closer," she commanded. The guards pushed Jake and Amy forward. Their boots echoed in the vast space. Jake counted at least 50 more aliens lining the walls. Some looked like giant insects. Others had scales or fur. All of them watched the 2 humans with hungry eyes. Queen Valara's skin shifted from blue to red as she studied her prisoners. "So these are the creatures that dare to refuse me. Humans from the small blue world that hides beyond the outer rim." Jake forced himself to stand straight despite the pain in his ribs. "We already told your soldiers we won't give you Earth's location." The Queen's laugh sounded like breaking glass. "You think you have a choice in this matter? I have ruled 12 star systems for 3,000 of your years. Entire species kneel before me. What makes you believe 2 small creatures from an unknown world can resist the Zephyrian Empire?" Amy stepped forward, her voice steady. "Because we're human, and humans don't break." The Queen's 6 arms moved in what might have been amusement. The lights in her crystalline body pulsed faster. "Human, such an interesting word. I have conquered the warlike Kresh who lived for nothing but battle. I have broken the Stellans who could read minds and see the future. I have made slaves of the Vorlak who were masters of space and time. What makes your species so special?" "Nothing special," Jake said. "We're just too stubborn to quit." The Queen rose from her throne. She was tall, at least 8 feet, and when she moved, her body chimed like wind chimes in a gentle breeze, but there was nothing gentle about the way she looked at them. "Let me tell you what will happen now," she said, walking down the steps toward them. "Your ship was carrying star charts. We found fragments in the wreckage. With those fragments, and the information in your minds, we will find your homeworld. Then my fleets will go there and remove every human life from existence." "Good luck with that," Amy said. "Earth has defenses you've never seen." "Perhaps. But that is not your concern anymore. Your concern is the punishment you will receive for your defiance." The Queen stopped directly in front of them. Up close, Jake could see that her crystal body was filled with moving lights like trapped lightning. "I could simply kill you, but that would teach others nothing. Instead, you will serve as examples of what happens to those who resist me." She pointed one long finger at Jake. "Commander Morrison, you will be given to the flame of eternal burning. Bioengineered fire will consume your flesh while nanobots rebuild it. You will burn forever, healing only to burn again. The pain will never end, and you will beg for death that will never come." Jake felt his stomach twist, but he kept his face blank. "And her?" "Lieutenant Carter will receive the brand of submission. Molten metal will burn the mark of my empire into her flesh. She will become my property, marked for all to see. She will serve in my palace until she dies of old age, carrying the proof of her defeat on her body forever." Amy's jaw tightened, but she did not look away from the Queen's terrible gaze. "This is your last chance," Queen Valara continued. "Tell me the location of your world, and I will make your deaths quick and clean." Jake looked at Amy. She gave him the smallest nod. They had talked about this possibility during their 3-day journey to the throne world. They had known what they might face. "No," Jake said simply. The Queen's body flashed from red to purple with rage. "You would choose eternal agony over a simple answer?" "Every time," Amy replied. So be it. The Queen turned to her guards. Take him to the burning chamber. Prepare the branding irons for her. Let the galaxy see what happens to those who defy the Zephyrian Empire. As the guards grabbed them, Jake caught Amy's eye one more time. See you on the other side, he whispered. Count on it, she whispered back. They were dragged away in different directions. The last thing Jake heard was the Queen's voice echoing through the throne room. Begin the tortures, and make sure word spreads to every world in my empire. This is the fate of all who resist. But as Jake was pulled through the dark corridors toward unimaginable pain, he held on to one thought. The Queen might break their bodies, but she would never break their spirits. And somewhere out there, Earth was still free. The heavy doors slammed shut behind him, and Jake Morrison's real test was about to begin. 6 months had passed since Jake Morrison first felt the flames eat his flesh. The bioengineered fire burned at exactly the right temperature to cause maximum pain without killing him. Tiny robots in his blood rebuilt his skin and muscles just fast enough to keep him alive. Then the flames would start again. He hung suspended over the pit of fire in the deepest part of the Queen's palace. Metal chains held his arms and legs spread wide. The burning never stopped. Sometimes he screamed until his voice gave out. Sometimes he stayed silent for days, but he never told them where to find Earth. Something strange was happening to his body. The constant healing was making him stronger. His muscles grew thicker. His bones became denser. The pain that should have driven him insane instead sharpened his mind. He began to notice things. The guard rotations, the sounds of the palace above, the rhythm of the machines that kept him alive. Jake was becoming something more than human, forged in fire and pain. 3 levels up, Amy Carter scrubbed the crystal floors of the Queen's private chambers. The brand on her back burned constantly. The Zephyrian symbol had been carved deep between her shoulder blades with molten metal. It marked her as property of the Empire. Every alien who saw it knew she was a slave. But Amy was not broken. She was learning. The Zephyrians thought humans were stupid because they looked different. They spoke freely around her, discussing plans and secrets. They did not notice when she listened carefully to their crystal song language. They did not see her memorizing the layout of the palace. They certainly did not realize she was studying their technology. Amy discovered that the Zephyrians were not as advanced as they pretended. Their empire was built on fear and superior numbers, not better science. Their crystal bodies made them strong, but also gave them weaknesses. Certain sound frequencies could shatter their internal structures. Their computer systems used harmonic patterns that could be disrupted. Every day she cleaned, Amy made tiny scratches on crystal interfaces. The scratches were so small that no one noticed them, but together, they created harmonic disruptions that slowly spread through the palace's computer network. She was planting seeds of chaos that would grow when she needed them. She also watched the guards and learned their schedules. She mapped every corridor and stairway. She found the weak points in the palace's defenses, and most importantly, she figured out where they were keeping Jake. Amy knew that Jake was still alive because the Queen bragged about his suffering. Every few weeks, Queen Valara would visit other prisoners and describe how the human commander burned day and night but still refused to break. The Queen seemed proud of her perfect torture, but Amy could hear something else in the Queen's voice. Frustration. After 6 months, Jake Morrison was becoming a problem. Other prisoners in the palace were starting to whisper about the human, who could not be broken. Some of the conquered alien races were beginning to ask questions. If one human could resist the Queen's worst punishment, what did that say about Zephyrian power? The night of the Crimson Moon Festival changed everything. Most of the palace guards left their posts to celebrate in the lower levels. The skeleton crew that remained was drunk on fermented crystal wine. Security systems ran on automatic programs. It was the perfect time to move. Amy had spent weeks preparing for this moment. She activated the harmonic disruptions she had been building in the computer systems. Alarms failed to sound. Security cameras showed empty corridors even when guards walked through them. Door locks opened at random intervals. She made her way through the palace using maintenance shafts and service corridors she had discovered during her cleaning duties. The brand on her back throbbed with each movement, but she ignored the pain. Jake had been burning for 6 months. She could handle a little discomfort. The burning chamber was exactly where she expected it to be. 2 guards stood outside the massive metal door. Amy waited in the shadows until both were looking away. Then she activated a harmonic pulse from a hidden crystal interface. The sound frequency was too high for most species to hear, but it made the Zephyrian guards clutch their heads in agony. While they were distracted, Amy hit them both with a stolen shock rod. They collapsed without making a sound. Inside the chamber, Jake hung over the pit of flames. His body was covered in burns that healed even as Amy watched. But when he looked up at her, his eyes were clear and sharp. The fire had not broken his mind. "About time," he whispered, his voice rough from screaming. Amy worked quickly to release his chains. "Can you move?" Jake dropped to the floor and rolled away from the fire pit. His legs shook, but he managed to stand. "I'm stronger than I was before. Whatever they did to me, it backfired." They had no time to discuss the changes. Amy's disruptions would not last long. She led Jake through the service corridors toward the palace's outer wall. Behind them, alarms finally began to wail as the security systems came back online. "There." Amy pointed to a small Zephyrian scout ship in the palace's private docking bay. "I've been watching them prepare that ship for a week. It's fueled and ready." They ran across the open space as guards poured into the bay. Jake moved faster than any human should have been able to move. Amy's months of studying Zephyrian technology let her start the ship's engines while Jake fought off the guards with his bare hands. The scout ship lifted off just as Queen Valara herself arrived in the docking bay. Through the ship's rear viewer, Amy saw the Queen's crystal body blazing with rage. Her 6 arms gestured wildly as she screamed orders at her guards. "She's really upset," Jake observed. "Good," Amy replied, setting course for the edge of the star system. "Let her be angry. We're alive, we're free, and we know her weaknesses now." But as they escaped into hyperspace, both humans knew this was only the beginning. The Queen would never stop hunting them. And somewhere out there, Earth was still in danger. They were no longer the same people who had been dragged before the Queen's throne 6 months ago. Jake had been transformed by fire into something stronger than human. Amy had learned to turn her mark of slavery into a weapon. They had survived the impossible. Now they had to find a way to fight back. The stolen scout ship crashed into the rocky ground of Korvax Prime with a grinding screech of metal. Jake pulled Amy from the wreckage just before the fuel cells exploded. They rolled away from the flames and lay on their backs, staring up at the alien sky. "Well, that could have gone better," Amy said, coughing smoke from her lungs. Jake sat up and looked around. Korvax Prime was supposed to be an empty mining world on the edge of Zephyrian space. Red rocks stretched in all directions under a purple sky. In the distance, old mining equipment sat rusted and abandoned. It looked like no one had been here for years. "At least we're alive," Jake said. His enhanced hearing picked up something strange. Footsteps, lots of them. "Amy, we're not alone." Armed figures appeared from behind the rocks. Jake tensed, ready to fight, but Amy grabbed his arm. "Wait, look at them carefully." Jake studied the approaching group. Some were tall and thin with blue skin. Others were short and covered in fur. But in the front, leading the group, were 2 humans. A man with gray hair and tired eyes, and a woman with dark skin and clever hands. "Don't move," the man called out. "We're not going to hurt you." "Are you the humans who escaped from Queen Valara's palace?" Amy stood slowly, her hands visible. "How do you know about that?" "Word travels fast when someone embarrasses the Queen," the woman replied with a slight smile. "I'm Lisa Wong, former chief engineer of New Singapore Colony. This is Ben Rodriguez, colony administrator from Kepler Station. Both places were destroyed by the Zephyrians 5 years ago." Ben stepped forward. "We thought we were the only humans left alive in this part of the galaxy. When we heard about your escape, we had to find you." Jake and Amy exchanged looks. They had assumed Earth's colonies were all gone. Finding other survivors felt like a miracle. How many of you are there? Jake asked. 43 humans, Lisa answered. But we're not just humans down here. We've got survivors from 12 different species. The Zephyrians have been conquering worlds for centuries. A lot of people have reasons to hate Queen Valara. Ben gestured toward a hidden entrance in a cliff face. Come on, let's get you underground before her patrol ships show up. They've been searching this sector for 3 days. The entrance led to a network of old mining tunnels that stretched deep into the planet's crust. But these tunnels had been transformed. Electric lights hung from the ceiling. Living quarters had been carved into the walls. Workshops buzzed with activity as aliens of different species worked together on various projects. Welcome to the Resistance, Lisa said proudly. They walked through the main tunnel, passing aliens that Jake and Amy had never seen before. A group of insect-like creatures were working on electronic devices with their delicate claws. Furry bear-like aliens carried heavy equipment with ease. Tall, graceful beings with 4 arms sorted through salvaged materials. How long have you been here? Amy asked. 3 years, Ben replied. We started with just a few survivors hiding in these tunnels. Word spread slowly. Other survivors found us. We began reaching out to resistance cells on other worlds. Now we have contacts in 20 star systems. They reached a large cavern that served as the command center. Tables covered with star charts and technical drawings filled the space. A massive communications array was built into one wall. Screens showed information from across the galaxy. Lisa led them to a medical station. Let me look at that brand, she said to Amy. I'm not a doctor, but I've learned a few things about Zephyrian technology. Amy removed her shirt so Lisa could examine the burn between her shoulder blades. Lisa used a scanner to study the mark carefully. Her expression grew serious. This isn't just a symbol of slavery, Lisa explained. It's a biological transmitter. The Zephyrians can track you anywhere in their territory. They probably followed you here. Jake felt his enhanced muscles tense. Are we putting everyone in danger? Maybe, Ben said honestly. But that tracking ability might also be useful. If we can modify the signal, we could feed false information to their tracking systems. Lisa was already thinking like an engineer. Better than that. We could use it to monitor their communications. Every time they try to track Amy, we can learn about their fleet movements and security protocols. Over the following weeks, Jake and Amy settled into life with the Resistance. Jake trained their fighters, teaching them human combat techniques, while learning from alien warriors who had their own fighting styles. His enhanced strength and speed made him an incredible instructor. He could demonstrate moves that no normal human could perform. Amy worked closely with Lisa on technical projects. They studied the sonic frequencies that could disrupt Zephyrian technology. Amy's months in the palace had given her detailed knowledge of their computer systems. Together, they began developing new weapons and jamming devices. But their most important work was strategic. Ben showed them star charts that marked every known resistance cell in the galaxy. The network was larger than Jake and Amy had imagined. Hundreds of worlds had hidden groups working against the Zephyrian Empire. The problem is coordination, Ben explained during a planning meeting. These groups don't trust each other. They've been beaten down for so long that they've given up hope. They need to see that the Empire can be hurt. Amy studied her modified brand in a mirror. Lisa had been working on it for days, turning the tracking device into a two-way communication system. What if we could give them proof that the Queen isn't invincible? What do you mean? Jake asked. Amy turned to face the group. We hurt her pride when we escaped, but we didn't really damage her power. What if we could show the galaxy that her palace can be attacked, that her fleets can be defeated? Lisa's eyes lit up with understanding. You want to go back? Not as prisoners this time, Amy said firmly. As attackers. If we can coordinate strikes across multiple systems while hitting the palace itself, we could trigger uprisings everywhere. Ben looked worried. That's incredibly dangerous. The palace has defenses that have never been tested. Jake stood up, his enhanced physique casting a long shadow in the cavern's light. Then it's time to test them. The Queen thinks she broke us. Let's show her how wrong she was. As the meeting continued, Plans began to take shape. Messages were sent to resistance cells across the galaxy. Weapons were modified and tested. Ships were prepared for what would be the largest coordinated attack in the Empire's history. Amy's brand had become more than a mark of slavery. It was now their window into the enemy's communications, and soon it would be the key to bringing down Queen Valara's reign of terror. The resistance was ready to fight back. 2 years after their escape, Jake Morrison and Amy Carter sat in chains again before Queen Valara's throne. But this time, everything was different. The Queen's crystal body pulsed with satisfaction as she looked down at her recaptured prisoners. Her 6 arms moved in complex patterns that showed her joy. "Did you truly believe you could hide from me forever? My hunters searched every world, every asteroid, every hidden corner of space. And now you are mine again." Jake kept his face blank, but inside he was counting. 30 resistance fighters were hidden throughout the palace, having infiltrated over the past month. Amy's modified brand was transmitting override codes to every computer system in the building. And outside, 200 ships waited in hyperspace for their signal. "This time will be different," the Queen continued, her voice echoing through the throne room. "Before I merely wanted information about your homeworld. Now I want revenge. You made me look weak in front of my subjects. Some worlds have dared to rebel because of your escape. That cannot be forgiven." Amy looked around the familiar throne room. The same black walls, the same flickering blue lights, the same alien courtiers watching with hungry eyes. But now she knew exactly how everything worked. She had studied the palace's systems for months through her hijacked brand signal. Every weakness, every vulnerability, every critical system was mapped in her mind. "Your Majesty," Amy said calmly, "you're absolutely right. This time will be different." As she spoke, her brand began transmitting the final sequence of override, codes that Lisa Wong had programmed 2 years ago. Throughout the palace, Zephyrian computer systems began receiving commands they had never seen before. Security networks crashed and rebooted with new programming. Weapon systems turned away from external threats and focused inward. Communication arrays started broadcasting on frequencies that would overload crystal-based technology. The Queen was still talking about torture and revenge when the first explosions rocked the palace. Her crystal body flickered from blue to red as alarms began screaming throughout the building. "What is happening?" she demanded, her 6 arms reaching for control panels on her throne. Jake smiled for the first time in 2 years. "We came back to finish what we started." The hidden implants under Jake's skin activated, sending a coordinated signal across the star system. Resistance ships dropped out of hyperspace at strategic points around the Queen's massive space fortress. Their sonic weapons, designed specifically to target crystalline structures, began hammering the palace's defenses. Lisa Wong's voice crackled over the Resistance communication network. "All units, this is command. Palace defenses are down. Begin the assault." Ben Rodriguez coordinated the attacks from the Resistance flagship. "Strike teams Alpha through Delta. You are clear for entry. Remember, Jake and Amy are inside. Watch your targets." Inside the throne room, chaos erupted. The Queen's guards tried to respond to multiple threats at once. Some moved to protect their ruler, others ran toward their battle stations. But the palace's own weapons had turned against them, firing on anyone wearing Zephyrian military uniforms. Jake's enhanced strength broke his chains as if they were made of paper. 2 years of training with the Resistance had taught him to use his fire-forged abilities with deadly precision. He moved faster than the alien guards could track, disarming them with strikes that shattered their crystal weapons. Amy activated the emergency release on her restraints, another modification Lisa had built into her brand. She rolled away from the throne and grabbed a fallen guard's weapon. Her years of studying Zephyrian technology let her modify the gun's settings for maximum effectiveness against their crystal bodies. "Impossible!" Queen Valara screamed as her perfect throne room became a battlefield. "My palace has never been breached. No enemy has ever set foot in this chamber." "Your Majesty," Jake said as he fought his way through the guards, "you keep forgetting that we're human. We specialize in impossible things." The palace shook as more Resistance ships joined the attack. Explosions echoed through the corridors as hidden fighters emerged from their hiding places to disable key systems. The Queen's 1,000-year-old fortress was falling apart around her. Amy checked her modified brand. The device was now showing her real-time data from across the galaxy. Jake, look at this. Uprisings on 15 worlds. The news of our attack is spreading faster than their communications can be shut down. On distant planets, alien populations that had been enslaved for centuries were rising up against their Zephyrian overlords. The sight of the Queen's palace under attack had broken the spell of fear that had kept the Empire together. If two humans could challenge the most powerful being in the galaxy, then anyone could fight back. The Queen realized what was happening. Her crystal body began to glow brighter as she activated ancient weapon systems built into her throne. Energy beams lanced out, cutting through stone and metal as she tried to kill Jake and Amy. But Jake's enhanced reflexes let him dodge attacks that would have been impossible for a normal human to avoid. Amy used her knowledge of the palace's layout to predict where the weapons would fire next. They moved like dancers, avoiding death by inches while fighting their way closer to the throne. 2 years ago you wanted to break us, Amy called out as she fired her weapon at the Queen's guards. Instead, you made us stronger. More resistance fighters poured into the throne room. Aliens from a dozen different species, all united by their hatred of Zephyrian oppression. The Queen's personal guard was overwhelmed by sheer numbers and superior tactics. Queen Valara rose from her throne, her 6 arms reaching for weapons that had been hidden in the crystal structure. She was ancient and powerful, with technologies that predated most civilizations. But she had never faced an enemy that refused to stay defeated. You have destroyed everything I built, she gasped as her defenses crumbled around her. Jake stepped forward, his enhanced body easily resisting the energy fields the Queen projected. We didn't destroy anything, we freed it. Amy stood beside him, her brand now broadcasting victory signals to resistance cells across the galaxy. You spent so long conquering others that you forgot what happens when people fight back. The battle for the palace was nearly over, but Jake and Amy knew the real fight was just beginning. Across the galaxy, millions of beings were rising up against their oppressors. The Zephyrian Empire was cracking apart, and at the heart of it all were 2 humans who had refused to break. The Queen's perfect throne room was in ruins. Her invincible palace was falling. And for the first time in 3,000 years, Queen Valara knew what it felt like to lose. The battle for Queen Valara's palace lasted 3 days, but Jake Morrison knew from the first hour that they had already won. The resistance fighters moved through the corridors like they owned them. Jake led boarding parties past rooms where he had once been tortured, while Amy coordinated attacks from the same chambers where she had scrubbed floors as a slave. On the second day, Ben Rodriguez's voice came over the communication system with news from across the galaxy. 37 worlds have declared independence from the Empire. The Zephyrian fleets are in full retreat. Most of their commanders are surrendering rather than fight. Lisa Wong added her report from the technical front. Their entire communication network is down. Amy's virus spread to every system connected to the palace. They can't coordinate their remaining forces. But Queen Valara was not finished. The ancient ruler had weapons and technologies that she had kept hidden for thousands of years. She activated defense systems that turned the palace, corridors into death traps, energy fields that could cut through metal, gravity wells that could crush bones, temperature weapons that could freeze or burn anything they touched. Jake's enhanced body let him survive attacks that killed other fighters. His fire-hardened skin resisted energy beams. His strengthened bones did not break under crushing gravity. But even with his abilities, the fighting was brutal. Amy used her complete knowledge of the palace to guide resistance teams around the worst traps. Her modified brand had become a master key to every system in the building. She could open doors, disable weapons, and redirect power with a thought. She's falling back to the deepest level, Amy told Jake as they regrouped after clearing another section. The Queen's private chambers are down there. If she has any final weapons, that's where they'll be. Jake nodded, checking his weapon. Then that's where we finish this. They fought their way down through levels of the palace that most people never saw. Here the walls were covered with crystal formations that pulsed with their own light. The air hummed with ancient energy. This was the heart of the Zephyrian Empire, where Queen Valara had ruled from for 3 millennia. The final chamber was vast and circular, with a ceiling that stretched up into darkness. The walls were covered with crystal panels that showed images from across the galaxy. Some panels displayed worlds burning under Zephyrian attack. Others showed enslaved populations working in mines and factories. It was a monument to conquest and suffering. Queen Valara stood in the center of the chamber, her 6 arms spread wide as she drew power from the crystal formations around her. Her body blazed with energy that made the air itself crackle. She had grown larger, more terrible, as if the palace itself was feeding her strength. "You have destroyed my empire," she said, her voice echoing from every crystal surface. 3,000 years of perfect order, ended by 2 insignificant creatures from an unknown world. Jake stepped forward, his enhanced muscles ready for whatever she might throw at them. "Your empire was built on fear and slavery. It was never going to last forever." Amy moved to flank the queen, her weapon trained on the crystal formations that were feeding her power. "Every species you conquered was waiting for someone to show them how to fight back. We just lit the fuse." The queen's body shifted through colors that had no names, expressing rage beyond anything human language could describe. "I have ruled star systems when your species was still learning to make fire. I have conquered beings with powers beyond your imagination. What makes you think 2 humans can stand against me?" "Because we already did," Amy replied simply. 2.5 years ago, you had us chained and helpless. You could have killed us quickly, but you wanted to make us suffer. That was your mistake." Queen Valara unleashed every weapon at her disposal. Energy beams that could melt steel bounced off Jake's fire-hardened skin. Gravity waves that should have crushed him barely slowed him down. Mental attacks that could drive most beings insane passed through his torture-strengthened mind without effect. Amy dodged the attacks while systematically destroying the crystal formations that powered the queen's weapons. Each one she shattered made the queen weaker, smaller, more desperate. "This is impossible," the queen gasped as her power faded. "I am immortal. I am eternal. I cannot be defeated by mere humans." Jake reached her throne-like control platform and grabbed her with hands that could crush stone. "You made the same mistake every tyrant makes. You thought being powerful meant you couldn't lose." Amy destroyed the last of the power crystals. The queen's body began to flicker and dim as her energy reserves failed. "The difference between you and us is simple. You fought to keep what you had stolen. We fought to protect what we love." Queen Valara's crystal form began to crack and crumble. 3,000 years of stolen life force started to drain away. "My empire will rise again," she whispered. "Others will come. The strong will always rule the weak." "Maybe," Jake said, his grip tightening. "But they'll have to get through us first, and we've learned a lot about dealing with bullies." The queen's body shattered like glass, sending fragments of crystal across the chamber floor. The panels on the walls went dark. The ancient energy that had powered the palace for millennia finally died. Amy's brand stopped glowing for the first time in over 2 years. The mark was still there, scarred into her skin, but it was no longer a symbol of slavery. It had become proof that humans could survive anything and turn their worst experiences into weapons. Jake felt the changes in his body beginning to stabilize. The constant enhancement from torture was ending, but the strength remained. He would always carry the marks of what had been done to him, but he would also carry the power to make sure it never happened to anyone else. Ben Rodriguez's voice came over their communicators from orbit. "The palace is secure. Resistance forces control all major systems, and we're getting surrender messages from Zephyrian commanders across the galaxy." Lisa Wong added her report. "The Empire is finished. Most of their fleet commanders are asking for mercy. The rest are just running." Jake and Amy stood together in the ruins of the Queen's final chamber, looking at the dark panels that had once shown a galaxy in chains. Now those same worlds were free, and it was partly because 2 humans had refused to break when breaking would have been easier. "Think they'll build statues of us?" Amy asked with a tired smile. Jake laughed, the sound echoing in the empty chamber. "I hope not. I'd rather they just remember that sometimes the best way to deal with a bully is to hit back." They walked out of the chamber together, past the crystal fragments of a dead tyrant, toward a galaxy that was free for the first time in centuries. Behind them, the palace that had been the symbol of an empire began its final collapse. Earth was safe. The galaxy was free. And two humans who had been ordered to burn and branded as slaves had instead become the spark that lit a revolution across the stars.